as written currently in the charter.
So the way I interpreted Mark's point was that it creates some tension where the board has the expectation that they can actually make these appointments when they're actually his appointments. That's the way I interpreted it. If that's incorrect, somebody on the board can correct me.
I agree with you. It says over here the appointments, the Board of Fire Commissioners shall appoint and may remove, subject to approval of the mayor. You know, should they recommend and then the mayor appoints?
A possibility, right? Like that's literally something for us to deliberate. I don't know, Chief, if you have any opinion on that I mean, the practicality of that is minimal, right? Because still it would be coming from the board, the name and the mayor actually appointing. But like the verbiage is a little different and a little more consistent with the rest of the charter. Any opinion on that, Fran?
Like I said, the practicality is that the mayor is the final authority and he makes the final decision on the appointment or not. Yeah, I mean, the verbiage, depending how someone interprets it, could be problematic, but it hasn't been recently. You know, going back some years, you know, when you have more than two people, there's always people are going to have a different opinion. So
right. Good. Other questions for the chief? All right, Fran, seeing none, just on behalf of all of us, just thank you and thank the 250 volunteers that we have as well. And, you know, now more than ever, we appreciate what our public safety professionals do. So just, you know, for whatever it is, from 7 humble citizens of Shelton serving on this commission, please let folks know that we appreciate what you guys are doing.
will do. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for serving our community as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
We got to figure out how to sign off now. All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 All right, team. We'll now pivot. Jim, I don't know if
I'm still here.
you're still here. Can you do you see the button in the lower left hand of your Zoom window that says start or stop video?
Can you see me?
I can't see you. We see your name and we hear you fine.
Can you see me?
Nope.
No. You know what? I've been on a couple of different videos, but I don't want to do that. Are you there?
Yep, we're here. We can hear you.
Yeah, I don't want to end the call. So if you don't mind, I'm not on. Is it okay?
That's okay, Jim. We believe it's you. We don't think it's somebody impersonating Barzak.
I don't know who would want to intimidate. I guess I don't know who would want to impersonate me, I guess. But let me if it's fine with you folks not being able to video me, whatever, I'll just go on with what I was going to say to you.
Please do.
Is that okay?
Yep, please do.
Okay. Well, just so you know that it's me. This is James Orzetti, 81 William Street. Most of you know I've been on quite a few boards in town: Conservation Commission, System Register Voter, A&T Board, Zoning Board of Appeals. I've been on the Perry Hill School Building Committee, and formerly was the Public Improvement Building Committee Chairman. I'm currently serve as the Vice Chairman of the Shelton Board of Education. I'm issuing a disclaimer at this point that my comments and opinions are mine alone and do not represent the Shelton Board of Ed, nor should they be construed to represent those of the Board of Education. And with that, I'd like to publicly thank the Charter Revision Commission for their service and their contribution to the city of Shelton. Chairman Danny DiVicelli, Mr. DeFlippo, Mr. Sheehy, Mrs. Ritter, Mrs. Dunford, Mr. Bellis, Mrs. Parkins, and Mr. Pizzuto. Thank you for your service. And Sophie Belade, thank you also. During the last charter revision of 2012, I spoke as a Democratic member of the Board of Education. I'm currently a Republican member of the Board of Education. Maybe that explains why I'm Italian-Irish, but I was successful in changing section 5.1.2.1 of the charter, allowing Board of Education members to serve on temporary committees relative to the duties of the Board of Education. Formerly, you could not serve on a building committee while a sitting member of the Board of Education. I had to relinquish my position on the Perry Hill School Committee. I think Mr. Sheehy will remember that. While I was still serving as on the Board of Education. My other main issue that I brought forth to the 2011, it was 2011 that I spoke to the Charter Revision Commission, was that of the minority representation composition of a 5-4 Board of Education. I believe then, and I still believe now, this is a complete circumvention of the will of the people. In my opinion, it's un-American and diminishes the purpose of electing representatives. I believed it 9-10 years ago, and I still believe it. For example, this past election, all 9 Republicans finished in the top 10, as only 5 can be seated from any one party. This meant 4 were seated per charter requirements for the minority representation, circumventing the will of the people to choose who they voted for. If I'll explain that if you would like. The 9 Republicans finished in the top 10, but the charter currently, section 5.1.2 states that no more than 5 members of which shall be from the same political party. So you can only have 5 members, no matter how many people finish. You could have, usually they only have slots for 9 folks to run, but you could have 20 people run and only 5 of those, even if all 20 people came ahead of whatever the minority party were, there would still be 4 slots for 4 seats for the minority representation. Does that make sense? I think everybody knows how it works on the Board of Ed.
Very aware.
Yes.
Everybody has it?
Yep.
Okay. And I told you, okay. So I watched your proceedings and I listened intently as the comments about minority representation resounded when asked if they were in favor of election by the people, with responses, the people should choose, and absolutely. Those were 2 of the responses that I wrote down from your public session. I guess it was a couple of months ago. I do not object to having a minority representation guaranteed. To what extent this city charter revision committee will determine just that. You folks are going to determine if it stays the same, if it changes, or what. Now, keep in mind, the Board of Education has policy restrictions that require a state-mandated 2/3 vote to institute and/or remove policy, adversely making the will of the people to affect change very difficult with the 5-4 split. So what I mean by that is what we have is a 5-4 board. So you have 2 parties. It could be 5-4, and you need 2/3 to change a policy. If you wanted to change a policy that the other party didn't like, you're not going to change it. So keep in mind that the minority composition could always be greater than what the charter provides for as the minimum, if you were to change the composition of a 5-4 board. So let's just say you changed it to, and I'm just using this as a number. Say you changed it to 8-1. Say only 1 member needed to be minority representation, and you changed it to 1. In a election, in a general election, it could still go to 5-4. There's no guarantee that there would only be 1 minority representation on the board, 1 seat being given up, but 1 seat would be guaranteed to be a minority seat. Okay, I hope everybody follow me on that.
Yep.
So
Yes.
it could be 7-2, it could be 6-3, it could be 5-4. It would depend on how everybody felt in the voting process. So I also listened to a suggestion that party affiliation should be removed from the ballot. Now, I'm proof that association to a party is a critical reflection of a person's philosophical ideas and important for identifying to a voter the differences on critical issues. And what I mean by that is there was some talk of, oh, let's remove the R's and the D's from that. Well, you know, R's, D's, S's, I's, whatever it's going to be, people stand for certain things and parties stand for certain things. And you know, I align myself with the Republican Party. So I heard of searching for charter revision consultations, going to outside venues for it. You know, I forget what groups were mentioned, for staggering Board of Education terms, for 4-year Board of Education terms, all of which I'm not in favor of, and which are, in my opinion, completely unnecessary. I heard talk of you know, going to a couple of different places to get folks to write our charter revision. I heard that. I'm not in favor of that. I think you folks are just fine. I think people from Shelton do a great job. Along with my request that you review minority representation, I would ask that electronic protocol for meetings, voting, attendance, and especially executive session guidelines be established in our charter. We've had which I didn't agree with, but we don't have any ruling to base it on. A person called in for an executive session. If you look in my FOI book, it says that the meeting can't start till the door is closed. And so I'm not sure. I think we need some clarification or some guidelines from the charter saying, you know, who can vote, how many times can you vote? I don't know if there's issues with that, but I think that we need to look into, especially in this day and age. Right now, we're having an electronic meeting. So I think it's going to progress as time goes on. There's going to be more and more of this. So I think I'd like to have you folks look into electronic meetings. My other concern happened this year with the Board of Education, and it goes to in Chapter 7 of our city charter under Section 7.1, subsection A. It says each board and commission and other bodies, including the Board of Education, departments and office and other agencies and officials of the city department which seek an appropriation shall not later than February 15th submit to the Director of Finance a report containing the following. And it goes on, you know, budget, that would include our budget. And the mayor wanted to grant us a 2-week extension. And according to the city charter, we had to rush like crazy to get a temporary budget in. Now, if you're following the Board of Education this year, a lot of things have happened, you know, not to make light of a few things. We lost a superintendent, stepped down during the middle of a budget season. And the mayor was gracious enough to want to give us an extension. But according to the charter, we had to submit one. So we did submit a placeholder budget, as we called it. And then we had another meeting and we finalized it and we submitted a budget. But I think that somewhere in there, the Board of Aldermen maybe, you know, should be able to grant, hopefully the Board of Education, you know, maybe a leeway at some point. There could be some unforeseen circumstances that would arise that would be, it would be a good thing to give the Board of Education a leeway, a couple of weeks or whatever is determined the amount of time to be in filing their budget. So that is that's my spiel, and that's me. And I'm available for any questions. Just remember, I do not speak for the Board of Education. These are my personal opinions. I've been on the Board of Education 3 separate times. This is my 3rd time, obviously. And so over a span of years, I've run into a few things.
Great.
So,
Well, Thank you for that. So you talked about a lot of things, and I'll kick off the questioning. I just want to ask you a couple questions on each. You talked a little bit about board structure. You talked a little bit about meeting protocol, and then you talked about budgeting. So let me start with the meeting structure. I just want to make sure I understood what you said. So there are votes by the Board of Education. Is it bylaws or rules that say you need a 2/3 vote to change policy? Is that
Right.
right? I understand
Right.
you? Okay.
Correct.
And so, and presumably you couldn't change that policy for a 2/3 policy without a 2/3 vote, right?
Right.
Okay. Got it. So with the structure then, I wanted to, we had, a couple of different structure suggestions. One was 6-3 board, which under state statute, you actually couldn't have a 7-2 or 8-1 board. It needs to be 6-3. The other was, and you touched on it, was a nonpartisan board. There actually was a third suggestion to do away with minority representation entirely and elect by ward, where you would have 2 Board of Education members from each ward and 1 at large from the city. And in doing that, you eliminate, because if you do it geographically, you eliminate minority representation. Is that something, and again, I'm looking into other towns, and not many other towns do it that way. But like, is that something, what's your reaction to that structure?
Well, I have done some research on some of this, and I've also seen where it was somewhere in Fairfield County. Don't hold me to this. It was one of the towns where a Democratic leadership was suggesting that the mayor appoint the chairman of the Board of Education. And I don't know how far that got in the legislation. I think that was, I can't remember that. I've heard of that. I think Waterbury does something different to that. As far as going by the wards, I don't know about that. I think that you should be able to run and be elected, just like anything. I think, okay, Board of Aldermen, you would have to live in that ward to run. I get that. So you're saying that for Board of Education, so Ward 1, you would elect 2 folks from Ward 1 or Ward 2, and they would have to live in that ward.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's
Right.
I mean, that's open for discussion. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that. I just think that, I mean, 6-3 would be better than 5-4 for anybody. And as far as being associated with a party, Republican, Democrat, I'll never vote for a socialist or a communist or anything like that. So if you're associated with those parties, I think that affiliation with the party is, and it always has been, pretty critical. Now, I think the largest party in the city of Shelton is independent, right? I mean, it's not a party. It's just folks are unaffiliated or independent. And I think that's the most that there is. They can vote for whoever they like, whoever's running.
And to your point, Jimmy, the minority party need not be a Republican or a Democrat party. In the city of Bridgeport, it was the Working Families Party for a while.
Right.
Right. So it's not,
Right.
we're not locking it. We want to design this charter to be party agnostic, right? Whoever the voters choose. I think, there's a question of, maintaining some balance and maintaining, different voices on the Board of Ed. But I get your point where you say, hey, you can only have 5-4 from either party, and you can't change policies except by a 2/3 vote. It's a little anti-democratic. I get it, small d. I get the point.
Right. I mean, years ago when Weicker ran, he ran as a Connecticut Party member. If you ran, how would that work? I mean, with the charter provide for, okay, you have to represent every party that's running. I don't think so. I don't know. I think
that makes sense. So let me flip over, because I want to give the other commissioners a chance to. Let me just flip over to your other 2 topics. So you talked about the meeting structure, and you mentioned executive session. What's the, 'cause I don't think the charter mentions executive session or rules for that right now.
It does not.
Yeah, what specifically did you have in mind there? What's the issue and
Well,
what would you suggest?
Here's the thing. If you read the FOI book, which we've been summoned to a FOI meeting already by some of our constituents or fellow members, if you read that, it simply states, so one of our members had called in to an executive session from while on a train, which is a public place, right? Isn't that that would be considered public, right?
Right.
So if you look in the FOI book, it says that the meeting can't start until the door is physically closed. Now, physically closing the door means to me that the meeting can only involve the people on the inside of that room. So I think that the charter, there's a lot of electronic virtual meetings that are going to happen, that are going to come up. I mean, how many times can you be absent from a meeting? Can you not attend every meeting? Or can you call in on a virtual call 2 or 3 times? Or is it unlimited? It doesn't say any of that in the charter. It's a new field. It's actually a new opening for everything. The executive session thing was just something that I threw in there because that's happening. That could happen again. And I would like some clarification without having to go to, city council on that,
Yeah, got it. So your point is much more, because we have that, right? It's much more around use of electronic media than it is around executive session, right? It's more clarity around use of electronic media.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Good. And the last question then, commissioners, I'll promise I'll shut up, let you guys ask questions. On the budget thing, do you think it would be sufficient, right, to give, whether it is the mayor or the board of aldermen, flexibility, and again, be agnostic, not just the Board of Ed, but to give any department more time for submissions kind of at their discretion? Or is there something deeper structural needed to provide for that flexibility?
Well, I thought that the mayor's willingness to give the Board of Education some more time, which he granted us. He said, take a couple more weeks, get it right, get your budget right. He wanted us, get it right the first time. Let's, and I thought that was great. I thanked the mayor, and we were pretty happy about it, because due to unforeseen circumstances, we lost our superintendent right while we were doing right in the middle of our budget. Mm-hmm. So now we have to get another superintendent and continue with the budget. Unforeseen circumstances, and it was a big stress on the board. And I think for something like that, I think that you should be able to go somewhere. But again, I'm reading in the budget here. It doesn't allow for. It says, let me see, what does it say here? Shall not later than February 15th submit to the Director of Finance. Now, I mean, it could be very easily something put in there, unless some sort of approval is granted by the Board of Aldermen. Maybe you go to the mayor, and the mayor goes to the Board of Aldermen and asks for a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week. The mayor, the city hall, the Board of Aldermen, realize they have to submit their own budget. But we're 60-something% of the city budget. We're a large portion of the city budget. We need to get our budget correct. And, sometimes a little leeway goes a long way. I mean, it was really a very contentious point of time for the Board of Education. It was something else. You had to be there.
Got it. Jim, thank you for answering my questions. I'll now open it up to the other commissioners. Don.
Okay. Hey, Jimmy. The idea of a nonpartisan election. So the one community that I looked at, Berlin, the way they do it is the parties can each put up slates of candidates. Nothing precludes that. The only thing that's precluded is, marketing themselves as Rs and Ds and appearing on the ballot as Rs and Ds. And my thought, and it's an interpretation anyway, or just the way I thought something like this could evolve, is I think you get some very good candidates in looking to be on the Board of Ed who didn't want to run the party gauntlet. And I realized that the two parties in Shelton have kind of taken on an identity, but it really doesn't reflect the opinions of all the small Ds, throughout Shelton. In fact, it's really like a little cult more than anything. My thinking is that you'd really get a lot of good candidates in there. How do you see that unfolding? How would you see a nonpartisan board going through a couple of wash cycles? How would you see that operating?
There's always been talk of that. Let me give you for instance. When I was a Democrat, I was chastised for working with the mayor. I was his buddy, and they were got very, very critical with me. You're supposed to be in opposition. What are you talking about? I'm trying to get things done. I was never like that. And I'm still not like that. I mean, I want what's best. And I think that there's a lot of people on the board that's wants what's best. But it doesn't always work that way. I was on the A&T board. I was told that if I voted for a certain person for chairman for the A&T, that the rest of the rest of the party that I was associated with at the time, they would walk off. It's a great notion. There should be a lot more of it, especially on the Board of Education. But it just doesn't. It hasn't been working that way, Don. I'm sorry to say. It just hasn't. I mean, there's a undercurrent right now on the Board of Education where it's just not working.
They're party driven. They're party driven.
Party driven, exactly.
Right. Which you kind of over a couple of cycles you get rid of it on a nonpartisan board, don't you? Or do you create more fraction? Do you think you create more diversity?
I don't know, Don. I've been involved in a couple of cycles. I think you know that.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when they mentioned that this is a new board or whatever, they say, well, there's old board members and there's new board members, and I tell them I'm a recycled board member, and I've been through it 3 separate times. I can't remember the first time I was elected to the Board of Education. It had to be 12 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I don't even know. But you would think that, but people run on the Board of Education, and there is a big problem with that 5-4, because 4 people are going to get on no matter what. No matter it could be 4 Republicans. I don't care who it is. But 4 people are going to get on the Board of Education no matter what they say or what they do. So it's your party. Everybody has a party caucus, and we're all well aware of that. We went through that with Republicans had primary this year. And so actually there was 14, I believe, something like that, Republicans that ran for a maximum of 5 slots on the Board of Education. 14, I believe it was. There was 9 that was put up, and then there was a couple of other people that weren't endorsed, let's say. And so there was that faction, but there's still, no matter what, there's going to be 4 people that are going to be put up by the town committee. So a 5-4, and that's where my thinking has always come into. Now, I don't know what you folks are going to do. I read the statutes too. I read the Connecticut state statutes, and I don't profess to be a lawyer, and I saw where it said, 6-3 for the state of Connecticut Board of Education. I don't know if that means for local Board of Educations. I'm told it does, you know, so I guess I have to go with that. But I don't have any proof. It hasn't gone to, I haven't had a judge tell me that that's what it means, because there's a thing called hometown rule where, you know, when you have something in your charter, your hometown rule, the city of Shelton has a city charter. So we are allowed to make rules that govern our town.
Great. So Jimmy, let me just pause there. Other questions from commissioners?
I just want to say, Jimmy, you really explained the problems that have been going on for some time, not just since you have been recycled. The votes have been very difficult because of the 5-4. The whole time I was on the board as well. So you really got it in a nutshell. And I agree with your idea that we need to address the new protocols for electronics, because executive session should not mean everybody on the train sees and hears our private business or our personnel business.
Right. I think, yeah, I don't mean, I'm not trying to come off and say, you know, that there should be more Republicans on the board. I want, you know, if more people ran, see, when you run 5-4, what happens in an election? I mean, you folks have all been in elections. A lot of you folks have been, and you know what happens is that the Central Committee puts up 5 people, 5 and 5. Okay, the one time that the Republicans put up a whole bunch of folks, and the Democrats only put up 5. Well, that's when we had a Democratic chair of the Board of Education. Because people still don't understand how to vote. They don't understand they can vote for 9. They think they can only vote for 5. Some people think they can only vote for 5. Some people think they can only vote for 4. It's a little confusing on the ballot. I could work with anybody. Look, I think you folks have a great charter commission committee there, and I know some of you. I've worked with some of you, and I couldn't say enough of thanks to it. There's a couple of you guys on there and a couple of you folks on there. I know what you've done for the city of Shelton. This is my home. I mean, whether and some of you are Democrat. I was a Democrat. It doesn't matter to me. If you're out and you're going to do your best, and you want what's best for everybody, I'm with you. I'm good. You know, I'm not going to be foolish and spend other people's money. That's the definition of a socialist. And I'm not a socialist, you know.
Hey, Jim, I have questions. You mentioned this policy committee or policies from the Board of Ed.
Right.
And I guess former boards voted on policies.
Right.
Yes.
And that's like a constitution for your board.
It's
So if you had all 9 new members, they would have to follow what other people have kind of voted on. Is it
Yes.
state statute? Does the state kind of mandate that you have these policies?
Well, I don't want to get into the legality of that, but let's just put it this way, that we have a policy book. It's I don't know, 3-4 inches thick. It's been about, I can't tell you how many pages in it, you know, and it's our playbook, you know. This is what you do. You know, some people abide by the policy and some people don't. You know, it's just as simple as that. I mean, you know, as far as you know, making comments, you folks all heard me, you know, give a disclaimer at the beginning of my dissertation here, because I don't speak for the Board of Education. This is Jim Orzetti speaking. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a citizen of Shelton, and that's what I'm speaking of. I do not represent the Board of Education in this. Okay, first of all, I'm a single member, and the Board of Education does not operate as single members. Just like you're an alderman in town. No, you could want whatever you want.
But these policies weren't voted on by the public.
Right.
It's not like this charter, which has to get ratified by the Board of Aldermen and then ratified by the public. This is just a policy of 9 people that could just basically guide how you operate your operation coming forward.
Wait, can I get in on that, Gary?
Go ahead,
The-
Allison.
Most of the policies in the policy book for the Board of Ed have come down through CABE. They're from the state level, they go to the Connecticut Association of Boards of Ed, and then they get distributed throughout the state. So we looked at them and we choose which ones fit our circumstance. And
So-
then it goes into the book. We have to vote to accept them. Sometimes we've altered them. But that's how we got that big book.
But who's CABE? I mean, this is a group of
The
people.
Connecticut Association of Boards of Ed, it's composed of lawyers and state legislators, I guess.
Right. We're a state board. The Board of Education is actually a state board. So,
So you're governed by state statutes.
right. Right.
Right.
Now
But
we have regulations and we have policy, our policy is what we are our guidelines, like past practices that we found were good, and the members of the Board of Education will vote on them, but say we don't necessarily want that policy anymore. Well, some people might still want it, and some people might not. And so how do you change it? You need 2/3 of the vote to change it.
And guys, to me, that's the crux of the issue. I don't think the issue to me is that they have policies, right? I would be surprised if they didn't, and I'm glad that they're informed by kind of best practices by the state. But to your point, Gary, if they are, they're not renewed every 2 years, it's kind of a permanent thing. To have that super majority, standard of changing it seems burdensome, right? It seems change.
Yeah, don't misunderstand me. We review policy all the time. There's corrections made to policies all the time. We find errors in it. We left something out. There's a big difference between and, or, but, and some of those things are changed. So, when we find an error, we all can agree on it. That's okay. That's okay to change. We've had a couple of them, and again, that sits for 30 days and then voted on at the next meeting. So yeah, we have policies and regulations.
Other questions for Jimmy? All right. Seeing none, Jim, you have given us a lot to chew on, and some of the most thorny issues that we're going to have to unpack in the next couple of weeks. So just really appreciate your insights into this, and thanks for taking time tonight for stopping in and chatting with us.
I appreciate it, and I'm sorry that the video, I did see you, but I didn't want to. I've been on, I think, 3 virtual calls in the last few days, and I don't know, my thing may be overloaded here right now, but I thought it was a very important thing that the voters' wishes not be, circumvented. I think there's some room for improvement there, and if you get more qualified candidates running all the time, we get people that have agendas. And they get agendas, and very hard to deal with. But yeah, I would appreciate any kind of if you looked at that, and especially with extending the budget requirement for the Board of Aldermen. And I really appreciate your folks' time.
Awesome, Jimmy, and as we appreciate yours, my friend. Thank you for stopping in tonight.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Bye,
Good night,
Jim.
guys. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then. So that concludes the interview portion for the evening. John Anglace has asked to hold off until we meet live again. which, assuming that this coronavirus crisis lasts a couple weeks, in a couple months, not a couple months, that should be fine. If we go too far into this with us having to meet virtually, I'm going to recommend John come in virtually, but I think he does have a preference to meet live. So where does that put us now? So with the exception of John, we've interviewed all of the folks who are on our original interview list. We also have not been getting new ideas. It was formally closed on March 15th, but just, we've gotten the ideas in, we're going to get in. We're kind of at the point now where if you remember our, 3 phases of our path, we're kind of done with our first phase, which is idea gathering. The last part of that I would propose we go over at the next meeting is that town comparison that I've been putting together, just so you guys can all see for the issues that we've been talking about. I've researched about 30 different towns and how they do different things. And so we can look at that. The news, this being Connecticut, is there is no one way that people do things. So there are a couple of patterns you can see, but literally if you wanted support for any idea, somebody does it somewhere. Right. So, there are a couple interesting patterns that we can see, especially when it comes to the size of the town and some of the choices they make. But we'll go over that in the next meeting. The other thing I would propose we do is, so there's kind of reviewing that. Second is there anybody else we want to talk to? And then third is we're ready to pivot to starting to deliberate some of these ideas, I feel. And again, I would much rather do it live than over Zoom, but with time being what it is, I think tonight went well enough that we can start talking about things over Zoom. Especially the way I would propose we do it is we start off with the easy ones, right? Is kind of, we went through, and as we originally talked about ideas, there was a number of them, about half of them looking back, that either we were favorably leaning towards or unfavorably leaning against. I would propose we start there. And let's start with the easy ones that we'll come to quick consensus on, get those out of the way, and save some of the thornier ones, like the Board of Ed, what we just talked about, until we can sit down live. And hopefully that's a couple weeks from now, not a couple months from now. But so that's kind of what I would lay out as the path forward. And I just open it up to you guys for discussion.
Dan, I just wonder if we can get a different opinion from another person from the Board of Education.
We certainly could.
Yeah.
We certainly could.
That's a good idea.
Like a point counterpoint.
We certainly could. We could certainly reach out to somebody on, my advice is if we're going to hear from somebody else, we hear from somebody from the Democratic side.
Right.
Not sure who that is. I'd have to look at who the 4 members are and who might be interested. But I think that's a fair thing to do. Other opinions?
Dan, just regarding the timeline, I think the social distancing has been put in place until, I believe, April 30th in Connecticut. So we'd either have to have a large room where we could have at least 6 feet separation. But right now it's still groups of 5. So I think we'd have a little issue with that. So I think our next couple of meetings are going to have to be electronic.
I think that's right. And I think that if what we're going to do is, if in the next month, what we do is, if there are additional interviews, like a Democratic member of the Board of Ed and anybody else you guys want to talk to, and if we tackle the easier issues, virtually, my guess is that will be best. And then assuming we can get back together in early May live, that's when we tackle some of the harder, thornier ones. But again, we may have to do that virtually as well. Who knows how long this thing is going to last. What I didn't want to do is I don't want to punt. I don't want to just stop meeting and because we'll lose time. And I'd rather not be rushed at the end. So, kind of what I would propose is we go to kind of, through April, just a once a week schedule, right? Where we're kind of just meeting once a week, where, it doesn't have to be a 2-hour meeting every time. We do hour meeting, hour and a half, and just start moving through things, right? The other thing is that, for this second phase we're going into, we're not dealing with language, we're dealing with ideas, right? So there'll be a third phase where we go through and rewrite all the details of the charter. This is more so what ideas we want to No, of course.
Sorry about that.
No worries. That's gonna happen. Nobody noticed my 6-year-old came in and gave me a kiss goodnight while
Oh, yes, we did. We did see that. That was very sweet.
stuff like that's gonna
Well,
happen.
we saw it. We saw it. And I think your wife too.
Yes.
Yep.
Stuff like that's gonna happen. So, any other opinions about the way forward?
That sounds good. Sounds
Hold
good.
on.
Hey, Dan, as far as when everything's written, is there a time frame to
I
have
think that's the best we can do.
or some attorney review what we've done? If you talk to the mayor on that,
I've not talked to, I do have to talk to the mayor about using corporation counsel, but my plan was if we can kind of get to a place where we have the, like, so our by and large timeline is we want to have this to the aldermen by the 4th of July, right? To give them time to do their public hearing to get it on the November ballot. My kind of timeline I have in my head is by the end of April, we have talked to everybody we want to talk to. We've looked at the comparison analysis. We've dealt with the easy issues. May, we get together and we hammer out the harder issues. Late May into early June, we're taking pen to paper on the charter. And then kind of those last couple of weeks of June, we're iterating with lawyers to make sure we wrote it the right way. And Corporation Counsel would love to work with him. If the mayor says, no, you can't work with them, we might have to find volunteer lawyers who are willing to look at it, but we do need lawyers to review the language.
but I think you need to schedule that.
Yep,
so
I
that
agree.
Schedule their time, or somebody to say, okay, could you be ready to help us these 2 weeks of June so that you're not.
Smart, Gary. I'll talk to the mayor about that, whether we can use Corporation Counsel or whether we need to get somebody else. Smart idea.
Scrambling.
Good. Other
Well,
ideas?
but plan.
All right. So again, does this time work? Do Mondays at 7 work? Do we just want to schedule this out through the month of April?
Sure.
Okay, thumbs up.
Okay, Dan, so every Monday in the month of April?
Yep, let's do every month. We're going to do them on
So far,
Zoom
so good.
and live on YouTube, so people can see it. And obviously, all these recordings will be posted on our YouTube channel. Sophia, I'll send you the link so we can post it somewhere on the city site so people have access to it. Maybe we can
Okay.
create just a charter revision page with links to all our meetings so people.
Okay.
And then next time, so agenda next time is we can talk. David, to your point, is there a particular member of the Democrats on the Board of Ed that we should reach out to, or would you rather me just email the 4 of them and ask one of them to come?
Who's that for, me or Darlissa?
That's for anybody.
Preferably somebody that's got a lot of experience on the board, right? Not a newbie.
Right.
Yep.
I'd be looking at maybe Kate, who was policy chairperson at one time.
And she did speak at our public hearing.
You spoke at our first
She
hearing.
did. Yes, she did.
Good. Maybe Kate's the right person to reach out to. You know what I do? Just to be fair, since we're asking them, I will email the 4 of them. I'll suggest Kate, but say, hey, whichever one would like to come, we'd love to have you for a half hour to talk about some of these ideas and get your opinions on
Well, maybe to make it fair, Dan, why don't you email the whole Board of Ed and say, Jim Orzetti spoke
them. If anybody
as
else-
an individual, and if anybody else would like to speak that way, we'd be more than happy to have them.
Yep. I can
That's
do
a
that.
good way.
As long as you're okay, guys are okay with spending the time, right? Because there's the possibility of making that offer that you get
Oh,
wanting to talk, right? So it's up to you guys.
But you're only going to select one person, correct?
That's what I'm asking you.
Yes, just one.
I would say just one.
well, then it should be a Democrat, then, no?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely.
So Gary,
Okay.
I think what you're hearing other people say is let's not make the opening to the whole board. Let's offer it to the Democrats and ask them to pick one person to come and speak to us.
Okay.
that works.
Good. So I'll make that offer and I'll offer it. Hey, we're meeting on Mondays throughout April. You guys let us know what's a good night for you. So whatever night works for them, we'll slot them in. And then otherwise, next time we will talk about the town comparison analysis, which I'll hopefully send out to you guys ahead of time so you can look through it. And then what I'm going to do is with our list of ideas is I'm going to divide it into 3. One is where I had written down we were favorably inclined. one where we were unfavorably inclined, and one where we said we needed more info. And we'll start with the favorables and the unfavorables. And again, the next few meetings are not speak now or forever hold your peace. It's more so putting those in a yes or a no basket that we'll come back and formally vote on later on in the process.
Can I just clarify on the Board of Ed, going back to that, were the other Republican members aware that it was going to be Jimmy Orizzetti not speaking on behalf of the board, but speaking sort of on behalf of the party, if you will?
I
Do we-
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I
No.
think-
I
So if
think,
we're going to reach out to all of the Dems and have them select one person, we didn't give that option to the other party. I
well,
just want to make sure that there's no concern over that.
Mhm. Well, I think Kathy asked Jimmy to meet with us because she had the budget things that she was going through.
Okay.
So when we initially started this entire meeting plan, she assigned him that. Please represent us. Although he did, but
Okay.
he did it personally.
Yeah.
But I like your
Okay,
idea
that's
too,
fine.
Ruth.
That's fine.
She
They
could
knew he
ask
was,
everybody
knew
and
he was
see what
gonna
they
speak.
say. Mhm.
Then that's fine. Then that's fair.
That's fine. Yep, that answers my question. Thank you.
Good. Good, gang. Then anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn for the evening? All right, if that is it, thanks, guys, for this. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Do I
Motion-
pick someone?
Motion by
Let's
Gary,
pick
second by
someone.
Darlene.
Yeah.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night. We'll talk
Yeah.
next week.
All right,
All
good
right,
night.
stay safe.
Good night.
Hi,
Good job.
guys.